Hello, Douglas.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Well, boy, I'm going to get strange on you today. So I didn't warn you of this.
So,
Uh,
so we're entering the zone of high strangeness. Yes.
Absolutely. This is, you better get your parachute with you. You better have your safety pack, your
Okay, but
parachute.
before we get started, everybody wants to know. I put some pictures on the cat report that we couldn't put on the video, and I'm going to show it right here. And hopefully, John, you can explain that most unusual hand sign you're giving over on the far left side.
Yeah, it'd be easy for somebody to really read into that a great deal, but I hate to disappoint you because back when that picture was taken, that just meant BS. And so it was a humorous gesture on my part. If you want to read into it something more than that, of course, you're perfectly free to speculate, but no, that's all it was.
And
And
Douglas,
Douglas is,
we explained yours on the cat report, but you care to explain what that is?
I'm back from Hawaii, and that's the sign in Hawaii they used to say hello, goodbye, hang loose, hang 10, shaka bra. And you always add bra at the end because that means that you are Hawaiian Kama'aina, a child of the island. So I was doing that for years afterwards because I wanted to go back to Hawaii, but not really.
But I must
oh,
say, and
you're,
I'll let you get on the show, John, you look pretty good there. Look at you, darling.
So I just want to say to everyone out there, shaka bra, hang loose. And in Hawaii, the ultimate hang loose is to go out in the old days on the old boards. You could walk to the tip of them as you're surfing until all 10 of your toes hung off the edge of the tip of the surfboard. And it's called hang 10. In other words, it's the best hanging loose you can do in Hawaii. So that's what that means. And this is the Buddha made this sign. Okay. Brahma made this sign. Vishnu made this sign. This is called the Karuna Mudra. And if you point it up, you're calling the devil. If you point it at someone, you're cursing them with the devil. And if you point it down, you're saying, devil, get away from me. So when we always tell everybody to say, get Satan, get ye behind me, do this sign pointing down and say, Satan, take your horns, go back to hell where you came from. Do not point this at someone and do not hold it up like the rock stars do, where they hold it up and everybody says, oh, yeah, what's that mean? And then they go like this and they go, what the heck's that mean? No one even knows anymore what that stuff means and its original sources. So all I can
well, I
say
do.
is shaka bra.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the newest installment of Interview with an Exorcist. My name is John Barnwell. I'm here in the greater Detroit metropolitan area along with Dr. Douglas Gabriel. And we're continuing on this wonderful casual journey that we've been taking through our personal biography together. And that's quite an interesting time. And we didn't even realize at the time it was going on the significance of some of the things that we had done. And so, with that being said, hello, Douglas.
Hey there, John. Well, today I have a very strange story for you, and it's going to be interesting to see if you remember this because I lived downtown in Indian Village. You lived out in Birmingham with the rich people. And downtown, that, as I've said before in previous stories, it was a bunch of mansions along these three streets that went from the river, the Detroit River, uh, for, I don't know, 8 blocks or so. And in that area, there were many haunted houses because that's where all the old uh, original rich people of Detroit lived. And I lived in one of the big houses and managed 14 properties, rental properties for the people I lived with as a mother's helper for these two doctors who had 3 children. So that's the framing for this. I'm walking along one day and I'm going to introduce you to a character. I don't even know if I'm sure I've mentioned this in passing to you, but and that you've been subject to some of these details, but I don't know if you know this story. I wasn't in Indian Village for more, the second time I was there, when I decided to live there for more than a few weeks, I kept walking by this house. And every time I did, I'd get cold chills up my spine. It was like, whoa, what's in there? But, at that point, I was smart enough to know just put up your shields. Who knows? There could be anything in there. This is Detroit. And so I just put up my shields and walked by. And so this went on for weeks. I walked by this house a bunch of times. And finally, I just get this clear message, like a voice just saying, you just need to find out who lives in there. Just go up and ring the bell, and on the side door by the sidewalk that you walk by, just go ring that bell. Nobody ever moves. There's never a light, never anyone in there. Why the hell would I be told to go ring the bell? Because I need to know the person who lives there. That's not something you do in Detroit in those days. And it's not something you do to one of these mansion houses. So I do it because when I'm told that clear, and I literally hear the voice speaking to me, and as the voice is speaking it, I'm doing it. So I go up, I ring the doorbell, and just as I'm ringing the doorbell, it's 1 second later, the door opens, and this ancient guy, I don't know how old he was. I never knew how old he was. You couldn't tell anything, as you'll find out in the story, certain about this man. And he opens the door and says something like, I was trying to remember earlier today exactly what he said. Something almost like, what took you so long, or something like that. Please come in. What took you so long? And I'm like, oh, this is going to be one of those wild adventures. And so I'm thinking maybe this guy needs some help, right? Because that's when voices would speak to me. Maybe somebody needed some help. I could go in, help him, doing some simple task, and go on my way, right? So that's what I thought I was actually doing. Even though the house had the strangest vibe about it. Well, maybe not of any house in Indian Village. That was the name of this area I lived in. Because there are many haunted houses there. But no, this one had a very strange vibe. I've never seen anything like it. So he takes me up this little set of stairs and turns, and we go into this study immediately. And I look around, and I can't describe to you what I saw. It was literally hundreds of artifacts, real artifacts. Now remember, I'm clairvoyant at that time. So these artifacts gave off their juju. They gave off their vibration, the curses that were on them and everything else. And every single item in that den had some kind of spell on it. You could call it some kind of spell. Now it could be a relic. It could be African. It could be these were from all over the world. Never seen a collection like this in a personal home in my life, not even to this day. And so he comes in and points, because he's walking with the cane. He points to the chair for me to sit down, and he goes behind his desk and he sits there. And I'm looking around, totally freaked out, because anything I look at tells a story, right? That's the problem with being a clairsentient. Things carry energy over time, and so it was intense. I actually thought I was kind of like in a devil's lair or something like that. Seriously, once I sat down, I'm going, oh, I don't know what's going to happen next. This is amazing, because I'm looking at this guy and he's shape-shifting right before me, and I can't get a bearing in this guy. And he's like, I'm going, well, come on, come to your senses. Does this guy have any brain sand in his head, or is he nuts? Is he, got any, how's his heart look? Has he got any of the pink drops in his heart? It's nothing. Or no, not nothing. I got 1,000 things, and it's all over the place. So he basically starts in on me and says, from time to time, I need someone to take me downtown. And I'm going, oh, here we go. Here's the ask. All right. And this guy's very strange. Maybe he'll tell me what some of this stuff is. He says, I need someone to take me downtown to the Wayne State University medical thing down there, this giant hospital complex thing, and to go with me. And I think that you're the person for that. I have been calling to you for days, and it took you days. He was kind of sounding like he was disappointed in me. It took you days. And I could see this guy was probably some kind of bizarre clairvoyant, but I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And so he starts off with the story like it's just going to happen. This is going to happen. Like I'm not even there. I'm just going to do his will because he's telling me this. Okay. And I'm going, wow, my eyes are ready to pop out of my head. And he says, I'll pay you well. I'll pay you well. You can see around here, there's no lack of money. And if you take me down there, and the reason I want to take you down there is because you're clairvoyant and you'll understand what you're about to witness. Otherwise, it tends to make people get a little bit disturbed. I'm thinking, what the hell have I got myself into? But in those days, I was very poor. I just got to Detroit. I had a few dollars in my pocket, but that was about it. So I thought, so I was selling myself out. So I said, well, I can drive this guy downtown. I got the car, my people I worked for. So I drive him down there. He didn't tell me what it was for. We get down there, and every time I drive, now I'm just going to jump ahead. Now we're going to have a telescope this time stream. This guy had the ability through empathy to turn into any disease known to mankind so convincingly that he went down and he tested the doctors, because he used to be a doctor of pathology as well as a world traveler. And he collected all the shamanistic stuff because he was into these bizarre ways of healing. He could turn his body, he could raise his temperature or lower it right there in front of you as they were testing him. I witnessed this. He'd go in and he'd have an illness. And man, I was already scared to touch him because he was displaying literally symptoms, skin breaking out. And he'd tell me, well, all you have to do, Douglas, is focus on something long enough and you become it. I'm a pathologist. I know exactly what they're going to test. So I just go there. And through the fact that I've known people in all of these conditions, because I've traveled all over the world looking at pathologies, I can imitate any of them.
Yeah, well, all you got to do is think of Woody Allen's movie. What was it, Zelig? Where if he stood next to somebody, all of a sudden he'd look like them.
That's what it was. And that later, Tony Robbins created he took the neurolinguistic programming of the guys who invented it and turned it into a modern cult. Because why? If you stand next to somebody, and that's what this is all about. That's why I'm telling this story. If you stand next to somebody who can do something, pretty soon you can do it, even though you can't explain it. And you don't need to explain it. It isn't your conscious mind that has learned it. It isn't your dreaming feelings that has learned it. It is your unconscious will. But your unconscious will is the subconscious of humanity, the collective unconscious. It is so smart that somebody asked the question the other day about the will, and I made a snarky remark. You can't see the will. If you saw the will, your will, you would burn up. Actually, Steiner literally says that. You would die. If you could see the will going on in your body, every single corpuscle, you could see it all, boom, you would die.
Yeah, a good example to bring it into another dimension. My friend and I, Cal Barber, he used to be in living theater in Europe with Julian Beck, and he was a black belt in karate and Aikido, and he studied in Japan with Shioda, and quite a remarkable guy. And he was in Fellini movies and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
I did my martial arts journey with him. But in getting into understanding some of the added dimensions of this, we look at it and we see that there's this aspect of will. And in martial arts, it's all, they always would say in Aikido, mind, eyes, and legs. And so you have three obvious characteristics of a human being that you can work with and you can train. And that is the point of focus within martial arts training. And so you see, like, for example, Master Ueshiba, who would, he was in his 80s and he'd be taking on 4 guys. And it's funny because they're moving as fast as they can, and it's like he's almost moving in slow motion because he anticipates their will. And so that's kind of representative of what Douglas is addressing here. You're on mute.
Bobby Hankins could do that. He even had old films where he would spar with 4 or 5 people at a time, and he would knock them all out in 2 seconds. He'd go, how can you move like that? He was moving slow, just as you said. So this guy, Dr. Silver, which was not his real name. I never knew his real name, but that's what everybody called him, because once he started doing this and he was retired, he did all this weird stuff. But down there at the University of Michigan, at Sinai Hospital, at Henry Ford Hospital, at Wayne State University Medical Center, he would, and the not far from there was the Epilepsy Center. He would go and work with them because he was into advancing medical science. And he taught me, I'd say, well, okay, of course, I had to ask him how he did this, because here I am watching him do it and going, good God, this looks, I can't tell what's going on. He's doing so many different things at once, and it's all just looks like jumble to me. So he says, okay, you have to remember 3 things, and only 3 things. Either you're in your waking mind, you're in your dreaming mind, or you're in your trance mind. Yes, I go into a trance while I'm awake, and I tell my body what illness I have. It believes it and then displays it. He says, do you not understand about what's it called when you create your own hypochondriasm? Or do you not understand that the mind controls the body? If you tell yourself you're sick or you're ill or you're well or you're beautiful, that's what you become. And so he'd just say, and he'd look right at me and say, you're in your waking conscious mind. What are you doing? You're not going to get there. Go into your dreaming mind. Go into it so that I don't exist anymore. You're just dreaming. You're in that world, of fantasy or whatever he'd call it, which is the imaginal world. And then he'd say, okay, now go into trance, because he knew I could go into trance, because I'd been going into trance since I was a child, especially for certain things. If you want to understand that, okay, so why am I telling this story? That part of the story is not done, but I'm telling this story because that's how a psychic works. We're going to talk about psychics today. And psychics are either in their head, their heart, or in their metabolic system. And they can take certain substances that make that stronger for them. But if they do, they also have illnesses that they'll contract if they're not careful. So I've been watching the psychics, for all this time, and be myself. I'd go into every psychic place. And once John taught me the card system, I really became very snarky. I'd go in and I'd give them a reading. Then after I've given the reading, then they would have to give me a reading. So I'd actually get a free reading by giving them a reading first. But I'd also be able to check them out when they're giving me a reading to see what the tools they used, how they created a buffer between themselves and the one they were reading, and how they didn't get contaminated by what it was that they were opening themselves to, which is the secret of being a psychic reader. If you don't have a barrier, if you don't have a buffer between you and that person, you could take it on, because you're becoming an empath to understand what the problem is. And then you have to be able to separate out what came into you through empathy into your selfless vessel. And then you have to let that go. It has to flow through you, not cast it out. It just flows through you. In the future, we'll just be like 2 clouds meeting, and we'll be able to pass into one another and commingle, and then we go on our ways, being better and bigger after we've encountered that cloud, which would be like the analogy for a person in the spiritual world. Well, that's what you're doing when you're a psychic. So anyway, I go down with Dr. Silver to all these things, and I get connected. And then pretty soon he's doing this brain research for the Epileptic Center and aphasia work. Now, strangely enough, Dr. Werner Glass, my teacher, got his PhD. And one of the biggest thing he focused on was working with the #1 guy in the world for aphasia. That's when your left and right side of your brain separate, and they don't work together. The corpus callosum, the thing on top that merges the left and right side, doesn't work. And let's say that it's your left side that doesn't work, then your a Wernicke or Wernicke area and your Broca area for speech and understanding and comprehension If that's on your left side and your temporal lobe and your frontal lobe, then you are messed up. And they used to say, nobody can recover from that. Once you knocked out your speech center on the left side, your temporal lobe and the frontal lobe there, broken wink area, that's it. You can't. Well, Werner was working with the guy who just demonstrated that was untrue and that you can retrain your right side temporal and frontal lobe to do that. But, and Werner's addition to this, because Werner was working directly with him as this was being discovered, was if you add eurythmy and movement and art and color and sound, particularly sound and singing, and what's called choral recitation, someone says something to you and you repeat it back. If you do all of that, then you can shift your speech center from the left side to the right side of the brain if that's necessary for whatever reason. So he was part of that. Okay, well, I was a test subject early on in that stuff at Wayne State Medical Center, where Werner was doing his research. I was one of the test subjects because I could turn my brain into consciously, because I'd been taught this from some of my teachers for a long time, into thinking, feeling, and willing. I could separate out my thinking from my feeling. In other words, your conscious thinking in your neurological system, your feeling in your rhythmic system between your heart and your lungs, which is really where the command center is, and your metabolic system, which goes into the subconscious, unconscious, and that is also reflected not only in the body, but in the brain. So it's called, for your waking, it's called beta, your beta waves, okay? When you're in your feeling and you're in your dreams, you are in alpha. When you are in your metabolic and completely unconscious when you're asleep, no dreams, no nothing, some would call it trance state, that's delta. Well, the scientists will tell you all this, but they don't seem to understand a single lick of what they're saying. But they will tell you that a child up to age 5 can be in delta and beta at the same time, but an adult can't. So you say, well, wait a second. How can the child be in a trance consciousness in their willpower, which means they have the capacity of the collective unconscious and their subconscious, and they're conscious of it, but they're not really conscious of it? How can that be? And this is called, there's 3 other levels, which they only discovered long after they discovered brainwaves. So if you have higher thinking, you go out of the beta wave and you go into gamma. And gamma is a very high wave. It's the highest of the brain waves, and it connects all the other waves together. It's called super learning. So I was part of the early studies on what's called transdermal direct current induction stimulation of the brain. And that was because I could actually tell them, I could feel what part of my brain is working and, tell them, no, you don't start on the left side, you start on the right side. And then, no, it has to be, go in at this brainwave, that'll work, the other won't work, or do 2, and then you create what's the in between, and that's the frequency that it's actually going to perceive. These kind of things. So I was hooked up all the time, doing studies, and finally we developed something where, with my thought, if I was in waking mode, I could control that. It was like a video game, kind of like you'd be able to control this little car going along, and it could go faster or slower. And if it was peaking, it'd go up, and if it was going down, the car would go down. It would show you your brainwave, right? So I could go into that brainwave at waking, and then upon command could go into, and these are specific frequencies. And by the way, you'll find all of these in this book, Gospel of Sophia, Volume 2, The Modern Path of Initiation, Tyler Gabriel, page 208. There's a chart that I believe that our incredible producer, my beautiful wife Tyler, is somehow going to make available to you. But this is the chart. And in this chart, that's really all you have to know right there to understand the psychic, to understand yourself, to understand brainwaves, to understand how to heal yourself, is to control the brainwaves, to know exactly what frequency it is. Now, I heard them. I don't see them. I hear them. So I can look at a person and hear their brainwaves. Always have been able to. And unfortunately, they'd be conflicted. And and this is a big problem. But in waking, if you go to higher waking, you go to what the big goal that Tyler and I had when we created the cube and through her biogeometry and through her research in vibrational medicine, and that's why she's a naturopath. She knows all this stuff. We tried to create an atmosphere for children where gamma wave would be manifest so that the children could go into super learning state. Now, even to this very day, people can't get other people through a projection of a device to go into gamma and stay in there more than 20 minutes. All the research, I was just researching it today and yesterday. So the research still hasn't got past that point. I always said they won't get past that point, because if you can't make yourself go into gamma, it doesn't do any good that Peter Kelly and myself helped develop a Tesla antenna that could project gamma waves. It was one of the last things Peter Kelly was working on down in Georgia. And so I was involved in a number of people, and people would call me up and ask me to do psychic work. And a lot of it was on brainwave and or pulse diagnosis or flower essences. How can you get a vibration that can heal? And this was what we were after. And we actually did come up with some pretty conclusive work. Matter of fact, that's why we created the cube, put it on a super antenna. We're beaming it out to the world. So anybody has the capacity now, even mechanically, to slip into gamma wave, because we have created a standing wave phenomena of that offered to everyone in the whole world. We didn't have to create a lot of these devices and sell them for $5,000 a piece. We created one, put it on a super antenna, and sent it out. Now, when you go to alpha, that's dreaming state. When you're talking to somebody and they say thinking, feeling, and willing, and you say, how do you feel about that? And they tell you what they think about it. Or you say, what do you think about that? And then they'll tell you how they feel about it. Or you ask them what they think and they tell you something, but then they do something else. That's because they don't understand. There's thinking, feeling, willing, beta, alpha, and delta. And when you're in delta, you don't even know what you're doing. Your willpower causes you to have habits that literally other nasty beings come in and participate in those nasty metabolic habits because you're unconscious of them.
Beta, alpha, delta. So that's BAD.
Absolutely.
But if you look at it and you go, well, okay, now that we have that, where can we go with this? And keep in mind, thinking, feeling, and willing, Rudolf Steiner's always returning to a threefold world view. And he'll, as Douglas frequently mentions, he'll frustratingly mention at the beginning of the lecture, as you know, like you're supposed to know right off the top what he's referring to. Of course, he's talking to a group of people that have been the students for a long time, but he frequently will preface, as you know, with the planetary conditions of old Saturn, old Sun, old Moon, and now we're on Earth, which is the fourth in the series. And then he'll go on from there. But you see that is the backdrop for what Douglas is talking about. So you could say, well, okay, then how does this gamma play into that? But one of the most dynamic aspects of the planetary condition, the chain of planetary conditions, Saturn, Sun, Moon, and Earth, is that in between they go into pralaya. And what happens during pralaya is it goes into rest for all the beings below a certain level. Archangels, angels, humans, they go into a rest regarding that particular Maha Manvantara, or great period of Manvantaras, of which old Saturn is one Manvantara, old Sun is another, old Moon is another, and the Earth is going through its own Manvantara. And so there's this recapitulation that goes on. But that point in between is pralaya. And I see that as like the gamma designation, because it really is something that's about the connectivity between all the various states of being.
Yes, and there's like a pralaya in between these different brain states. Now, the good thing is, if you're an anthroposophist and you look at this and you look at the new research, you see the gamma wave is really, now they know, a subset of beta. but it's a much higher frequency. So what is that? That's called moral imagination. That's when your thinking becomes like angelic thinking. And literally, this can be tested. This can be demonstrated. There are machines. Tyler, as a matter of fact, witnessed a guy come over to our house with all the fanciest stuff with brainwave stuff some years ago. And I said, "Oh, you have one of these? Oh, that's awesome. I helped develop this. Hey, you want, does it work for you?" And he goes, "No, I can't get it to work." I said, "Oh, well, here, I'm going to put it on. I'm going to go 1 minute into beta, 1 minute into alpha, 1 minute into delta. And then I'm going to go 1 minute into gamma, 1 minute into mu, 1 minute into theta. And I'll make a clear distinction when I go between the realms." And it recorded all of it and did exactly what I said. And so Tyler witnessed this. So this, from early on, I don't know whether it was because people gave me some training in it and I had the capacity to also hear these things, not quite see them, but hear them. And even then, not really hearing. So I worked with this, and then the transdermal cranial direct current induction stimulation was an idea I came up with a long time ago when these people were saying this. It was for epileptics. It was to clear an epileptic of really the memory in the organ that was creating the epilepsy. It would clear the memory. Well, it also clear your brain memory. So if you start on the left side of the head, you send an exact frequency through to the right side of the head. It prepares that part of the brain for what's about to happen, so that it opens it up. Because until you open the brain up, you're not taking anything new in because it's so busy. It's busy enough with all that's going on. So I studied the brain a lot. I just realized I haven't done a good intelligence report or a good expose on that, but I should, because I used to teach it and because it was directly related to crystals. So anyway, I got involved in all of this stuff back then because of that. But now, psychics, when you go and you look at a psychic, are they neurasthenic? Are they real thin and drinking a bunch of coffee or tea or some stimulant? Well, that means that they're probably just an astral psychic to begin with. Matter of fact, most of the psychics you go to are looking at your astral body, your desire body. Why? Because they're not deep enough to look into your etheric body. And they're certainly not deep enough to look into your physical body, because then they'd see your previous incarnations. So if they're telling you all the previous incarnations, it could still just be some la pictures from the astral light of the astral body of the psychic reading your astral body. But that happens every time you come near somebody. If you stand near somebody, don't you feel them? If you don't, then you're not evolving properly. Sorry. If you don't feel the pain of other people so that it becomes your own pain, then you're missing out on where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to have that divine Christ compassion and empathy, but also not stupid empathy and not stupid compassion, but truly enlightened, acting out of free will, so that your love is given not through duty, but through absolute freedom. So anyway, then when you go to the feeling realm, well, that's where most people live. They just lope along in the feeling realm. They don't wake up all day long. So when they say you're in a dream, or you don't know what's more real, the dream or your real life, that's because you're in your feelings. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But when it comes to the willpower, and by the way, then if you develop a subset of alpha, you have mu, M-U. And you can look all this up. It's also in the book. The chart is very clear. You can look up mu, and mu is a subset, and that is one that is kind of like the different stages of sleep. So that there's certain types of dreams. There's dreams that happen when you wake up. There's dreams that happen when you go to sleep. There's dreams that are digestion of the day. And really, that's what mu is. And so the person may be a dreamer, but they also may be able to bring it back into reality. And that's the mu state. And then there's the delta state. But before you get in the delta state, you go through clearly crossing the threshold and becoming unconscious. And at that's called theta state. Well, the theta state is the state that they tell you that you want to go into when you're in meditation, that's the state that heals your body. Well, delta is the state that heals your body, folks, not theta. Theta is a precognition of the delta state. And basically in that theta state, you have, if you can be awake in that, and I've often said, you want to become initiated, stay awake for 3 days, and or stay awake as you go to sleep. Good luck. And as you practice that, you will experience theta. And when you're experiencing theta, then you are literally seeing angels manifesting before you in two-dimensional images, the imaginal world. You're hearing the sound of the music of the spheres, and you are approaching the abyss. Now, that's the part people don't like. When they approach the abyss, they go unconscious. Now, I'm describing stages of psychics. Now, when I came to Detroit, you remember, John, Saul Lewis and the Michigan Metaphysical Society. They had some really good psychics there. Some of those ladies were amazing psychics, right? And so I connected with them and taught crystal classes there and worked with their psychics and this and that. But at the same time, the Boston Tea Room was the place. They had a family Boston Tea Room over there, and it's on the Detroit River somewhere. I can't remember the name of the city, but now it's moved to Ferndale. And when it was at Ferndale, I helped their niece, I think she is. I would screen the psychics for the Boston Tea Room because I went there one day and I heard some stupid psychic giving a really bad reading. Well, I didn't like that. So I knew the lady and I said, I knew your parents, or it might have been her parents or her. Yeah, I think it was her parents. Give me the birth dates of your readers and I'll tell you the good ones and the bad ones. You see my point here? I was very manipulative because I didn't want people getting bad readings because it's bad karma for the people. It's bad karma for the reader, right? The reader gets the illness of the bad karma of the person they gave the bad reading for. So I saved them, and I became from that point on the person who had to check out the readers who read there. They still the best around, Boston Tea Room. And there were a few other places. But we had, I'm not going to mention his last name because he's still alive. I don't know if he still does readings. The best reader I ever encountered besides Guru Das, who I've talked about before, paid psychic just like me. They'd usually pay both of us and then compare the notes. And I was told they never disagreed. So this other one, I'll just say his name, Dennis. Best psychic reader, 3-hour psychic show on the radio. I used to go on it. I think you used to go on it too, didn't you? But I'd go on it and I couldn't believe him. Some person would call up on the phone and say, hello. And this, I'm literally repeating exactly what happened one day. I was on the show many times, but he did this all day long. And he was either 100% on, or sometimes he'd be a little bit off. And if he knew he was going to be off because he did it all properly through proper diet, meditation, fasting, spiritual training, he did it all right, and he's still doing it today, where all the others either turned neurasthenic and crazy, or they turned fat and got cancer because they either used sugar or salt and coffee, or sometimes alcohol. So they use their trick to get across the threshold. But if they're just reading the astral and they're neurasthenic, then you're just going to get, some pictures that they get from looking at your astral body. So what? But if they're really good and working from the heart, then they can read both the astral, the etheric, all three, and the physical. And that's what I was doing. So I would literally go around busting psychics. I really enjoyed doing that.
Well, you're talking about Denny Fairchild.
Oh, you said it out loud.
Oh, everybody loves Denny. And
he's the best.
Hopefully he'll get to see this. And yeah, we go way back, back in like 1970, 70, 71, 72, had a band house. And when we first got the house, I was with our lead singer was Harry Perry. You could see him on Venice Beach with a turban on rollerblades and a guitar.
Famous.
Yeah.
When they show Venice Beach, they show Harry Perry
Perry.
time.
Yeah, HP. But yeah, he had HP in the grassroots movement, and he used to play the Hideout, which my friend Punch Andrews owned, and he was the manager of Bob Seger, and that's a whole. I could go on for days. But getting back to Denny, so we got this house out in Farmington near the ravine. And supposedly it was located on a spot where the Underground Railroad had traveled, sneaking slaves out of the South, right? And up on the way to Canada. But anyways, so we had this band house, and Harry was in Hair, with Jerome Rogney and a lot of people from Detroit. We had like vocally that perhaps considered the best cast. Sean Murphy, who with Eric Clapton and Bob Seger and lead singer for Little Feat. And you go on and on with the people that were in that cast and get distracted very easily. But Denny, he was in that cast. And when he came to the house, Harry says, yeah, I got a guy come here to check out that room. We had this one room. And he came in and he had on this old lady's fur coat. And he walks into our laundry room, and there's like, washing machines and hot water heater and all that. And he goes, oh, and we can make this the toy room. He's the funniest. He's got the greatest collection of comic books, perhaps in the United States. I mean, what can you say about Denny? He knows so much about health. He has helped so many people. He would travel to India to consult with, super rich people in India. And you just got to love Denny.
Yeah, he's the best psychic of the time. The only other comparison is Jackie, who I never met. I talked to her on the phone a few times, but Jackie would open up her lines one day a month, and they would be filled for all the appointments she was going to do for that month. And she was like, many times, 90 to 100% accurate. Denny was 100% accurate when he was accurate. There's no doubt about that. Like I was saying, the lady says on the phone, I remember the first time I ever went on a show, lady calls, and the first thing she just says, hello. And Denny says, oh, I'm sorry to hear about your flat tire last night. What was that, the left rear? And she goes, yes. Oh, and your litigation that's going on. You don't need to worry about that. I know it's been going on for months and months, and it's actually going to go on for more months, but it's going to work out. Oh, thank you. Sometimes all they would say to him is hello, and he would give them a reading that would blow me away listening to it. Okay. That's the reason he was the only psychic in America with a 3-hour show a week.
Yeah. Yeah. He, Jackie Kendall's who you're referring to, and she did all the psychic readings for, like Marja Max Fisher and the Fords and all these super wealthy people and all that. And she was quite remarkable, but she was careful because like with us and with Denny and we just let people, we didn't like screen anything or, like on her show, they'd say their information and then they'd hang up and then she'd say what she's going to say and they weren't there to respond. So it's a lot safer turf. But yeah, with Denny's just flying off the seat of his pants would come up with this stuff. But see, Denny worked at the Mayflower when I first started working at the Mayflower. And that was what he was based out of.
That's where I met him.
His old buddy. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
see, I had known him from years before when he lived in our band house back during the hair cast days.
You were always in the commune house, whether it be the Thibodeau Mayflower commune house or, you were always where the happening was, the band house with amazing people. John could go on and on and on with all
the 524 house in Birmingham with Dave Miller from the Grandy Ballroom. That's a whole series of stories right there.
Absolutely. Somehow through Detroit, so much of this has passed. It's absolutely ridiculous. But yes, Denny was the best around. But then again, at the Mayflower, I taught classes in this, and I was always able to teach people to become great readers. Some of them literally became a reader, and that's all they did. Nowadays, I just went through the pages yesterday. There was in Berkeley, there was a place where Cindy Saul, who later got Emmy Awards and was on with Oprah and everything else, and her friend Jerry, they started Phenomenews. Well, Phenomenews was a page, front and back. The back page was Bob Thibodeau and me. We wrote the first articles for the first edition of Phenomenews. And they had been to England and saw a thing called Body, Mind, Spirit Festival. So they came back, started this New Age magazine, really. It eventually turned into The Magazine. And later, Metro Times even kind of copied their format. And that guy, who was a friend, would always do a test of the psychics each year and test us. I was always on the list. So was Bob and John and all these people that we knew. It was, we knew all the psychics in those days. Now I've checked. There's thousands of psychics. So beware, because if they're reading your astral body, they're just reading basically the most. They're reading your demon body. They're reading all of your proclivities towards darkness, and that's very easy to read because that jumps right out. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Make sure you put the hand signal down, demon out, not demon up. Okay. So we met. Once I met Denny and I met Saul and his gang at Metaphysical, Michigan Metaphysical. I felt like in the Boston Tea Room, I felt like I could do anything I wanted. I could do anything I wanted, and I was really not into charging money for it. I just did that for high level stuff. And I remember I worked with Pat Flanagan and Marcel Vogel, and I'd answer questions for anybody around the world. And I became very famous because Dr. Silver, the amazing empath, turned me on to all these people. And when he died, which was not long after I met him, they would turn to me and they'd say, well, can't you come do what Dr. Silver did? And I go, no, I can't. I'm not going to have leprosy for you tonight so that your doctors can say I have leprosy. And then you can go, ha, 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 I'm tricking you. I don't have leprosy. That was what Dr. Silver was always trying to do. Don't make a diagnosis because of symptoms. You need to have some kind of, interaction with the person that you figure out what the cause is, not what the symptom is. This is what he was always teaching. So Dr. Silver, tell me, John, did I ever tell you about Dr. Silver?
Actually, I don't remember hardly anything. I remember like something is triggering back here, but I'm not real clear what it is. And most things that we've had in conversation, I can repeat you the conversation for the most part, So, but in going down this particular pathway, we have to mention John Lilly, because John Lilly was the inventor of the sensory deprivation tank, and his wife Tony. John Lilly was considered. He was described in I don't know, maybe it was Time magazine or something like that. But he was described as a one-man syllabus of Western civilization. He was a polymath. He was an expert in numerous fields. And he developed the sensory deprivation tanks and was the one who was communicating with dolphins. Now, I never met him, but we were in contact with his wife, Tony. I would talk to Tony on the phone because we were considering opening up a sensory deprivation facility here in Detroit. Cal Barber and I, who I'd mentioned earlier, the martial artist. But it was due to a lot of the work that John Lilly contributed, and also you get into people that are very deeply embedded in the science world, like Bert Stubblebine, who was in charge of Men Who Stare at Goats, of which Douglas is also quite aware of, and that there's this study being done by the intelligence agencies regarding the ability to be able to perceive at a distance.
I worked with that group. I worked with his wife. As a matter of fact, she called me in because I was doing a Waldorf testing to see if this Waldorf school was the place they wanted to buy. They were filthy rich. They called me in to test. And the beautiful Waldorf school had the beautiful redwoods on it. And so she takes me back to the office and I sit and she goes, no, Russell Targ, that's his name. Sit down at this desk. And I went, I'm not going to sit down at the desk. She goes, no, I want you to see if what he's telling us and this whole thing, they've been silver speculating. Sit down at the desk. I want you to feel the vibe and tell me what you think. So I sit down and I go, holy cow, I don't want to sit at this desk. This dude, and then I described the dude. And she goes, that's my husband. I said, well, you never told me any of this. Her name was Kennedy. That was his wife. And so, yeah, you meet these people. They are like with Lilly, his chief student for sensory deprivation was an anthroposophist who was in the military, who worked for the military at Groton. And I went to Groton because I had heard of him. His name is Carl Schaefer, and he did sensory deprivation. And I worked with him quite a bit and showed him that lulls memory theater would keep you awake in sensory deprivation longer than anything else. And so I demonstrated that to him, and he goes, okay, now we can get somewhere. So then I did some more stuff with him. And so I was all the time getting involved in strange research because I was such an oddity, and because people didn't even know what brainwaves were, let alone that they could move between them, and that there were 3 other ones. They considered this to be basically 3 plus gamma, and they didn't consider gamma to be a brainwave. And so these other 3 subtle ones are basically imagination, inspiration, intuition, exactly as Rudolf Steiner taught it. And when you go and you read about each of these different levels of the brainwaves, you go, well, that's exactly what Rudolf Steiner teaches. So it was very easy to go to body, mind, spirit festivals where everything was new age, and there were all these psychics. And then all of a sudden it exploded. For a while, it was just the Mayflower group and the Michigan Metaphysical. Then it became everybody. Now it's all by telephone or Zoom. And so in the Detroit area, literally, I couldn't look at the entire list. It was thousands of psychics. Now, how many of those are real? The more we continue to be pulled across the threshold, the more people will be able to see into the spiritual world. That is true. But if they do not do the same thing you have to do for exorcism, which is prayer, fast, study, morality training, all kinds of trainings, things like speech fast. If you're going to actually attempt to do an exorcism, you need to have done a speech fast recently. In other words, 30 days of silence. And best if you lived on bread and water. Who's willing to do that? Father Solanus was willing to do that. And he healed everybody. He'd send him a handkerchief, just like Padre Pio. Send him the handkerchief. So I got into all of this strange brain stuff. And then I said, well, what's the very best you can do for the brain? Well, you do Waldorf education. And then I found out, yes, if you dance and sing all day long, guess what? It builds your brain. Your brain builds until you're 28, until your wisdom teeth usually have to be pulled. It builds until you're 28. So what you teach a child when they're young becomes their environment, becomes their organs, particularly their brain organ. You are literally building the convolutions of the brain. But there is no end to the wisdom of the brain. There is no end. You cannot be an expert in the brain, and you can't, at this point, even be an expert on the heart.
Expert on a mirror.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
A mirror in a moving jet reflecting the starry sky. It's like, yeah, you've got all that. It's inside there. It's all inside the mirror.
But it is. Oh, and by the way, this book, if you do not believe me, get this book. You can get it as a free PDF from our site, artspirit.com. But you can go onto the Amazon, and if you're a guy and you want to know about ascension and the process of spiritual development and all the hidden spiritual traditions, it's in this book. And it tells you exactly. All you have to do is you can literally go and get devices. For instance, when it says, let's give you a for instance, and this is very typical of spiritual knowledge. Okay. When you say that delta is 1 to 4 hertz, right? I wanted to make sure I got that. Delta is 1 to 4 hertz. Theta is 4 to 8. So it's a little bit higher than that. That's that state you go into before you go to sleep. But 1 to 4 hertz, get a whistle or a frequency oscillator that can give you 2 hertz, and everything alive will drop over dead if you can make the amplitude loud enough. That's how powerful these are. When you get to 8, that's dreaming, 8 to 12, but that's also mu. 8 to 11 is hertz. That's frequencies per second. Well, what is that? We are a dream. What is it that is 8 hertz? Basically, that's the frequency of the heart. That's the frequency of the Schumann resonance. That's the frequency of the universe. And it's going through everything.
It's just under 8, 7
Yeah.
point.
7.43 in most cases, yes. And the Tibetan bells, they knew that, and they made them that way a long time ago because they were natural clairvoyants. So all of this stuff, me as a natural clairvoyant, I would look at this stuff and I'd say, what is that? and then like yesterday, I was with somebody. I was with Paul Stumpo. He's the best person for a safe space and for making your house the right vibration. He can assess your house through a pendulum, as dowsing. And he's describing these lines and he's naming them. I'm going, I've always known about those lines. I didn't know they had names. Science now literally uses a pendulum in the production of cars, a pendulum which isn't supposed to work, to determine if a substance, the vibration of the substance, is going to create a problem later. So here's two engineers telling me this yesterday. I'm going, they've come that far? He goes, yeah, there's even a fancy name for it.
Yeah, the pioneering work that was done by Christopher Hills that Cal Barber, again, and I were associated with. And we were some of the first people in the world to start using spirulina algae as nutrition. That's a whole bank of stories there. But the point is that when you get into work with pendulums, well, why would they work? You have to get into what Douglas was saying about thinking, feeling, and will, that you can use a pendulum to do a reading from that deep, deep level, that unconscious level of your will. And when you work with a pendulum and your testing devices, it's just like when you do muscle testing that was developed by my friend, Dr. George Goodhart, who developed kinesiology that's in use among so many thousands of chiropractors around the world, where you test to see if something makes you weaker or stronger. You hold it in one hand and then you have somebody push down on your arm. And if it weakens you, it's not a good idea at that time. And so that being said, there's so many dimensions to this. And again, once again, we barely scratched.
I got to jump on that one. I am a certified, trained, and experienced educational kinesiologist. And I trained with Goodhart's #1 student, Dr. Renke, who was my doctor, and Dr. Goodhart was my doctor. And I knew all along, because I could see it, that the muscles are smarter than your brain.
Yeah.
Your muscles know ahead of time before what's going to happen. Your muscles know what is yes and no. They know, they clearly tell you, you muscle test. And so basically, I was a principal, right? And unless the person was a sociopath, and usually I knew they were a sociopath, you could muscle test them and nobody could get away with anything. No child ever got away with stealing cookies under my watch, because I could simply have them go like this, do this. Okay, I'm going to pull these apart. Okay, you got your hips tight? Yeah. Did you steal the cookie? No. Whoop. Yes, you did. It never fails with children. Now, adults can lie to themselves so much that their lie is so embedded in them that their muscles will lie a little bit. But no, your muscles, because that's your willpower, your metabolic system, it is smarter than you are. It is the collective unconscious. It's a superconscious. And the lower you go, you thinking, feeling, willing, the more asleep you go, that part of your body is ruled by a higher hierarchy than the previous.
Yeah, well, just look at how intelligent your eyelashes are. I mean, your eyelids. You know, you'll be sitting in front of a campfire and a spark will fly up and you'll blink. Okay, well, do you remember telling yourself to blink? No, it happens way too fast for it to be a conscious deliberation of your waking mind. It's something that's happening on a deeper level. And so when you go to this, you go, the brow is Jupiter, and that goes into the realm of imagination. The throat chakra of 60 petal lotus is imagination, inspiration. And then when you get to the heart, that's the intuition, and that ties into the will force. That the true representative of that will force is the warmth in the blood. That is a image of the old Saturn condition. And so you see the primal warmth, and then the etheric, and then the astral, and now we're here on Earth. We've received this ego to take up these impulses and find a wholesome way to integrate them. And I want to thank everybody for stopping by in this ingenious production of Tyler Gabriel and Dr. Douglas Gabriel. There's Tyler there.
Yes, I enjoyed it so much. Again, I
You have a new bandana. Like every time.
listen,
Yeah.
no, I got my copper and my silk.
Oh,
my
she's got her
crystals.
crown on.
Wow.
I figured it's working in my garden, so maybe if I put it on my head, it'll open it up a little bit more. But anyway, I just want to remind people why I'm finding this series so interesting is because we're listening to you describe your spiritual path, your journey. The two of you were together on this journey for a long time, but it's a way for people to understand what that spiritual journey could look like for them. Won't be yours, but everyone has a spiritual journey.
Yeah, it's all out there, and you'll be amazed. I've had people just out of the blue, like what Douglas is the story he told about dropping in that house and that meeting that guy, and the guy says, "What took you so long?"
Right.
I mean, it's just it's all around you. When you come to a certain threshold, the world is there to meet you. And as Johann Wolfgang von Goethe said, first commit, and the whole world will rise to help you.